Today, I'm thrilled to have a fascinating guest, Ube Urban, who brings a unique perspective to the table. Ube is currently the head of customer experience digital at Simon Kucher and has held major roles at companies like Fjord, AT&T, Deloitte, and Coca-Cola. Beyond the corporate world, Ube also pursued his entrepreneurial passion with his own venture, Ube's Ice Cream Shop, where he fused creativity, design, and his love for custom bicycle frame painting. In today's episode, we'll unpack Ube's dynamic journey from his early days in industrial design and computer engineering to leading customer experience strategy at some of the world's biggest brands. Plus, we'll hear about the lessons he learned from launching Ube's Ice Cream Shop and why he believes authenticity is key to both personal and professional fulfillment. You won't want to miss this one.
Great. Ube, welcome to the show. Really great to have you on. Thank you for joining us this week. So, Ube, it'd be great to kick off, as always, by just hearing a bit about you, your journey into design, and just take us from the start.
How far in the start, like academia or even professional? There's a lot of different phases and stages of my development.
I know you've got a very extensive background. I mean, let's take it just through professional. We'll go from professional.
All right. I'll sprinkle a little bit of salt and pepper of my academia in it, kind of because a lot of it kind of informs my direction going forward. Let's see. So let's just start with academia. I came into the whole design world and processes through computer engineering and industrial design. I went to California College of the Arts and Crafts, which is a private school, design school. And I studied industrial design, product making there. Then I went to UC Berkeley for computer engineering, ideally for web management and design. Nothing what I did was design. It was clearly only studying the various languages and what have you. I think I did like a handful of sites and what have you. It was during a time where CSS, HTML, JavaScript, Flash was hot during that time. So there's like a lot of blinking and strobing effects that would give you a potential seizure, but we thought it was cool at the time. So with that, it ended up having me going towards the industrial design sector because it aligned more with my background of becoming an inventor / engineer / designer. There's a lot of slashes in there that added to my development, which helped curated someone in my position that didn't have a whole lot of framework and vision into where I wanted to be. I'll go into this little tangent. When I was a kid, I had this overall notion and kind of throughput of what I wanted to be. I wanted to be an inventor. I didn't know what that meant, though. It just meant that I really wanted to capitalize on creativity. I wanted to do what they did at Disneyland. I wanted to potentially work at the design offices, at Lego. But when it came down to it, we'll probably unpack this later. My family structure just really wasn't really built around that. We didn't have the structure or even industry knowledge of where I was going into. So that made it a little bit hard for that open landscape or even doors of opportunity to have that clarity going forward. A lot of it was ambiguous. Most of it, I would say about 95% of it was kind of learning and putting it in practice. And then I also had this other kind of underlying thing that I didn't realize was coming to fruition is just like being a person of color in this particular industry. And at first it was industrial design. But even industrial design is kind of like the same as CX, but CX, UX, UI, business strategy, research, it didn't quite exist as prevalent as it does today. So I'm gonna go back. I know I went off on that tangent. But yeah, my academia pretty much kind of created like this overall framework and guidelines of where I wanted to go and where I am at today. I jumped around at a lot of different agencies in the mainland and in the US. I kicked off my career in academia in San Francisco, California, and also the East Bay, which is a hop skip over the river. But yeah, that's where a lot of like my background, you know, came to fruition. I know I used that before, but like it was like a aha moment going forward. And then with that, I guess we could like segue into kind of my agency or my design agency, my company. But before I go there, I learned quite a bit through the various agencies. I don't really want to list their names. But I learned what I didn't want to do. I learned about different processes. But my main takeaway was learning about how to interact and treat people. I was just one of those people that, was getting my foot in. Higher management would potentially talk down to me, especially like even senior bosses. And it didn't really feel good. I was like really in retrospect thinking, is this really what I want to do? Like I was thinking it was puppy dogs and ice cream, thinking everybody was cool. Everybody had like this kind of large vision going forward of like creating amazing products, amazing electronics, high-end furniture, even architecture. I mean, like I've been in so many different like areas of expertise. And then when I came down to it, it was just like it was a business. It was around money. Like fun didn't really equate to earning money on the books. It didn't equate to having that holistic vision that you can apply to the client that you interacted with. And I just didn't think that was the right way. I thought like a lot of kind of the fun, the ambiguity, the personalities, what people brought to the table really brought this like tailor-made or bespoke feeling going forward when you did interact with clients. So you can think back, or I could think back, that a lot of what I learned catapulted me with the foundation. And of course, again, I'm like learning this in real time. I don't know that this is going to work. I'm managing, working in an agency, doing brand development, doing interior architecture, and also like high-end furniture design. And then most of my stuff was like ethnographic studies. It was like kind of blueprint. I was doing like a lot of 3D CAD stuff. And so when it came down to that, I just thought like, man, I got to shift and do my own thing. Like I think I have something that I want to do. Plus, I just didn't want to report to a bunch of assholes. That's what it came down to. I was just kind of sick and tired of like the internal politics. Spoiler alert, it doesn't go away. It actually intensifies. But I thought like doing my own thing, I would be able to kind of part the seas and just like have this like amazing experience and firm that I would be doing for the rest of eternity.
Mm.
And
it's
yeah,
interesting
go
that
ahead.
you say that, Ube, because I think I've heard a lot of this from a lot of people going through that background that you've had, right? Coming through
Yeah.
agency, that client relationship and that kind of way of working, it can bring a lot of stress, right? It can make it quite difficult to kind of enjoy the role.
Yeah. I mean, I mean that perception, that role, everybody has a different outlook. I had mine, and it didn't align. There was a lot of things that didn't align. I started to meet people that I looked up to, and they were also starting to become my competitors. And having that like first interaction, whether it's at like some type of mixer or even trying to pitch for a client, um, I soon realized that people were people, and what I was doing was glorifying these individuals that I didn't know. But like we do that as a kid. We even do that as adults. We have this like superficial interaction of who we think anybody is, and we refuse to have that alignment of like, hey, maybe this person's not like that. Maybe they're like a complete asshole, but like having that disconnection and having that like lack of empathy of like, okay, maybe this person could be, such and such, or they're dealing with this, or, I'm dealing with that, what have you. You're strangers. You don't know anything about each other. There's so many walls in between. And then you meet these people, or maybe you never meet them, and you see the real person behind whatever walls, whatever your interaction is. And, it just doesn't meet apples to apples. Things don't align perfectly. And when things don't align, you have like a huge disruption, and then you don't really want to have anything to do with a lot of people that you thought represented the design field, the CX field, the UX, UI, research, what have you. So yeah, like a lot of my, kind of people that I thought were stars, quickly were demystified with my personal interactions, which was a good thing for me, and again, like to allude to what I was saying to before, I just had I had like a different notion. I had this like this blank slate of what this industry or whatever I was going into. I didn't even know what I was going to. Even when I was working in agencies, I was like, hey, I graduated. I have a BFA. I have an industrial design degree. I have like a, AA degree at Berkeley. Cool. Awesome. I guess I'll go in that route, but when it came down to it, it was a lot larger than that.
Yeah. And I think what's also interesting about this is, when you've been in this industry for a while, as long as you have Ube, or, I like to think I've been in the industry for long enough as well.
Everybody, I am 27 on record, 27 years old. I don't know what Warren is saying.
Don't look a day younger. But yeah, no, I think, I think a lot of us found ourselves, right? I think things weren't as structured back then as they are now, in the design world. I think there is a lot more structure now. There's a lot more understanding about the competency and how it works. But back then, I think a lot of us were finding ourselves, right? And like you were saying, it probably took you a while to actually
Finding myself now.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, like, I'm still trying to figure that out.
You said quite a bit of stuff like that really resonated to me, and I was chuckling inside because it's like I was today years old when I found out that I can't trust what people are presenting to me. So you're talking a little bit about you can put people on pedestals, and you think, wow, okay, that is the guy, that is the woman, whatever, and they're doing their thing, and then you actually interact more with them, and you realize, yeah, they're not that person. Like, they're not who you think for whatever they're worth. The deeper I got into my career, like especially into leadership, the deeper I got into leadership, I realized that as an IC being managed by leaders, you see one side. But once you kind of go up into leadership and you start, kind of rubbing shoulders with, kind of leadership peers and stuff, you see the other side. In fact, you see both sides. You see how they present themselves to their team and how they present themselves to you and how they present themselves to others. And
it's night and day.
yeah, it really is. It really is. So yeah, I found that incredible. I also found it interesting that, you've done industrial design. I also studied product design, which is also industrial design in the
Yes.
UK. And I was just wondering actually, because it's quite rare, or at least it was when I was coming up, to kind of find someone who had industrial design backgrounds going into digital design. I just wonder if are there any like principles that you've learned studying industrial design that supported you through your career? Anything that's kind of stayed with you, or was it all just irrelevant and just went out of the window as soon as you?
Yeah, no. I mean that's a great question. It wasn't all smoke and mirrors. I would say the majority was through my experience. But a lot of it from putting it in practice and academia gave me the ability to transition it into kind of the digital experience, or digital is kind of what some people talk about, basically blending in physical environments and digital environments. A lot of times, not a lot of times, they always overlap. And a lot of that, like I was able to, take forward, and I just, I guess this is more of me looking back now. Like I just didn't want to go to college. I didn't want to go to academia. I didn't want to be in a place that I couldn't apply and be proud of in my professional state. Like I I'm assuming we're kind of all in the same age gap, but everybody kind of went to college. It was just a thing to do. You check those boxes, and then like you went out in the real world, and that's where you actually found what you wanted to be. But you didn't actually go to college to become what you studied and what you invested all that money and time into going forward. And I just I didn't have the time for that. I didn't have the resources. I didn't even have the budget for that. So I couldn't waste my time. I did not have that flexibility like other people that I went to school with. Everybody was completely nice. They were great, but it was just different financial levels and classifications going into higher education, which we'll probably unpack later. And I don't know if this is too early, but like a lot of the people that I looked up to and towards they weren't me. They didn't look like me. They didn't even match my skin type. They were essentially polar opposite of what I wanted to be. So like in retrospect, this is kind of like growing up in the islands of Hawaii. I was trying to be basically the quintessential American mainlander, which is horrible, but we all kind of do that in surreptitiously in societies, even international waters. You have bleaching creams, you have like all these different ways of like trying to become somebody you aren't, so like this was like this underlying thing of I'm not that person, but like how do I become that? Like maybe I don't have that political value or ethnicity, but like how do I do that otherwise? So like I had this stream that, okay, I have the academia, I have the sense of structure of going forward and the professional value, but I had something coming downstream, which was I couldn't augment this me. I couldn't augment how I was raised, my background, and that affected me my whole career, even till this day. It's really hard to shake it loose, and unfortunately, society kind of brings these reminders, even high in leadership, whether you're SVP, EDC, like I don't know, like you could be like high up executive, even like just senior manager and up. That's where I started to experience a lot of areas that press me in an uncomfortable way of where essentially I wasn't happy to be myself. But I've done so many great things. I've worked on so many digital products. I've essentially changed a physical element of being industrial design into something that was digital that you necessarily did not interact with in your hand. It wasn't tactile. Tactile means something different nowadays. You're pressing on a screen, maybe you're pressing a call to action button on an elevator, which are horribly designed, which we all know. But it was very different of like how to bring this enrichment of my sense of self. It was more of like, oh yeah, I want to get to this level, and it's like kind of this narcissistic value of just me being me. It was more of like, how do I bring myself up? How do I bring up other people of color? How do I bring up, even if you're not of color, how do I bring up people that are in these positions to relate, to go forward? How do I bring up the people I grew up with that had no visibility or even have a clue of what I do, no matter how many times I explain to them? They just don't have that intuition, that understanding, you know? And yeah, I don't want to really digress, but like at the same time, a lot of kind of my foundation, my culture, um, steers me in specific directions, whether it's good or bad, um, having me going forward in my career, like it has everything and nothing to do with it. Usually people, they just want to hear about like all the cool shit that I've done. Awesome. You worked on these multi-million-dollar projects. You're amazing. But they don't necessarily want to hear the structure and the steps and the agony that it took to get there. They don't want to know that personal journey map. A lot of people that want to tune in or tune into your last chapter, they're like, oh yeah, whatever. You're over that, right? Cool. Let's concentrate on your last deliverable. Absolutely not. I can't. Me personally, I can't, because like I still represent where I come from, and I'm very proud for myself and other people going forward as well.
Yeah. And like it's really some really interesting topics that you're touching on there, Ube, right?
I know, right? Sorry, I know I'm digressing. I know
No,
yeah.
you're not. You're not. Let's dig
Okay,
into it.
okay. All right.
I want to focus on one specific one that you mentioned there because
Yeah.
it really sparked some thoughts of me speaking to another designer last week about this, right? The question of how do I move up the ladder? How do I get to that next step? And
Yeah.
Asking about being professional was the topic, right? It's like,
Mhm.
how can I get to a level of professionalism where I feel like I'm almost looking like the people in those senior roles, right? And I think you kind of were mentioning that, right?
Yeah.
And like almost having to put this
Yeah.
persona on, right, to kind of reach those higher levels.
Mhm.
And I was struggling to what to say to him because, in a way, I was kind of saying or thinking that, yeah, you're probably gonna have to use some of those kind of personas or the ways that those kind of people act, right, to kind of get to
Yeah,
those levels. But
absolutely. Yeah.
do you think that it means you're not really bringing your authentic self to the office?
Yeah, you're not. Um you're bringing probably 8 to 10% of your authentic self. And I guess I'll reverse back to how you um, captured that overall question of like what is considered authentic. Is it being yourself? What is the industry seeing in you? And what are you trying to put forward? I think there are a lot of answers for everybody to explain. Spoiler alert, there isn't a absolute hypotheses to this, but like I can tell you my perspective on it. You know, the organizations. Let's just go corporate identity. Let's shoot big, because that's where usually a lot of like the conflicts have happened with myself. Maybe a little bit of medium-sized corporations as well, but a lot of it that goes into it, which I would like to add to what you're saying, and also that you didn't mention, is learning a new dialect of a new culture. And we're not just talking about US or American, we're talking about corporate identity. We're talking about being buttoned up. You know, if you were never taught this, if I was never taught this, but we still have like a little bit of color, you know? And I always say, how do we bring color to this product? I don't care who's in the room, I always say that. How do we not just create another kind of BAU, business as usual product? We can do that all day. I could do that blindfolded with my hands tied behind my back, and I could sell the work. But like, how can you stand by something that you feel good about, that you put a little bit of yourself, that you put a little bit of your folks, your people behind that product? You know, I mean, you can't disclose that when you're putting it out, but like, there are some products that I put out there where I'm like, yeah, that represents where I come from. I'm very glad that that went out and that was released to millions, you know, hundreds of millions of customers. That's amazing, and it's successful, you know. But like, to look at the other side of the sword, because it's always double edged. You have the organizations; they want you to talk the talk. They want you to speak the dialect. They want you to be part of the organization. They want you to know that you could be in a structured framework. Of course, cool. That's how you get in. But at the same time, they want somebody different. They want a Warren that has a little bit of hue. They want an Ube that looks a little ambiguous, that has weird hair, that has a sense of style. They want Jay that like, oh yeah, he's kind of cool. He's bringing like a little bit of the streetness, whatever. Sometimes you have to play on these like stereotypes in order to go forward, you know, in order to be hired, in order to make it through an organization. You know, I could really like capitalize on a lot of stories that I've had in organizations. We'll save that for later in the conversation, but like, this is like the reciprocal conversation, that to look at it just from two lenses. You know, I can expand the aperture in as many different ways, but like, for me personally, this is why I get hired. I don't look like the BAU person. I'm not like another cog. If you want a cog, you do not want to speak with me at all. I'm gonna bring new ideals. I'm gonna bring you more money. I'm a basically manufacturer at A plus team. You know, whether I'm there or not. Like, this is my job. This is my job to bring to an organization. And also, I'll meet my OKRs. I'll meet my goals, my financial goals for whatever unrealistic timeline that you're allocated with, you know. I don't know if a lot of people talk about this, but sometimes when you sign on to an organization, you get a nice lump sum, you get a nice bonus, but you have to hit certain goals in 6 months to a year. These goals could be maximizing a team, having 400% growth in all clients, let alone organizational revenue. This could also be maximizing and having more aperture within digital customer experience, UX, UI, whatever they want to call it. Performance marketing. I've been called so many different things. I'm just kind of like, I take it with a grain of salt. You know, people are like, oh yeah, graphic designer. Oh yeah, visual designer, performance marketing, customer success, oh, research. And I'm like, yeah, cool, whatever. You know, as long as we have that partnership and agreement, like, to go forward, that's great. But that's just for one individual sector. When you're trying to represent for and have compassion or empathy for a team that relies on you, that's where it becomes a little bit difficult, you know. I'll pause there. I don't know if either one of you have like questions going forward, because like there's just so many different factors that kind of add to the new
This is so,
professional.
so interesting. I want to double click on a few things that you mentioned. I think the main thing that resonated to me, so this is what I want to make sure on a little bit, is
Yeah.
the whole idea of like bringing your whole self to work. The reason why I feel like this is so important is because I can, I think what Warren mentioned about, pretending to be someone else and all this kind of thing, because you have
Hmm.
a perception of what leaders are. That was literally me. Like when I got promoted to head of design at a pretty young age, quite a big company, and I just saw all these people above me. They were like 20 years older than me. Used to kind of dress in like fleeces and
Yeah. Yeah.
sweaters,
We
all
all
this
know.
kind of
We
stuff.
all know how they
They
dress.
used to wear boots and chinos, and as you can see, like I'm not like that, right?
Yeah, that hasn't changed much.
I thought that's what I had to do. I literally thought like that is what I had to be like. That's who I had to be. When I look in the mirror before I go
Hmm.
to work, like I have to look like one of them in order to fit in. And it just ended up being my downfall, man, because like I wasn't happy. I always kind of felt like I was impersonating someone, wasn't bringing my
Hmm.
whole self to work, all this kind of thing. And I think, I was always kind of just conscious of that. And I think even being conscious of that, kind of makes you, once you started hiding who you kind of really are, I suppose, you then become fearful of like bringing that person out, right? Because you
Hmm.
now think that you got hired or you got that position because of this, alter ego or presentation that, you've kind of presented to everyone.
Yeah,
So
100%.
my question is, I guess, what can people do to bring their whole selves to work, right? To be authentic, to not be afraid of who they are. I don't know if there's any tangible tips. I don't know if that even is a thing, but I'm sure there's people like me and I'm sure there's people like you. And I think
Yeah.
it'll be interesting to know, I guess, kind of how you handle those leaps and transitions and environments and how you're able to stay yourself.
Yeah. I mean, like, I want to disclose, like, I am not fully myself. I try to bring as much percent that I could bring to the forefront without getting a slap on the wrist, without getting in trouble, without being written up to HR, without getting terminated. You know, like, that's kind of my press. But like my press for me personally, that's like anywhere from like 8 to 12%. If I brought my 100% self, like it just wouldn't work. Yeah, no. You know, in retro, just like long story short, I would just be calling out people on kind of their BS. I would be enlightening people of how others feel when they say that, even though they cannot speak for themselves. This still happens in current present time. I don't foresee that changing. I've interacted with hundreds of people that they want people like us to speak up, and they're appreciative of it, but they cannot do it themselves. And I'll represent for everybody, but like essentially, I want you to speak up. I want you to step up. I will give you multiple opportunities to present your authentic self, or forget authentic self, just give you a voice. And a lot of people, especially people of color, just they don't feel like they have that platform, or when they do have that platform, there's some repercussions for speaking up. And I've seen it, and it's horrible, but like at the same time, I get that. Cool. You cannot necessarily bring yourself forward. You do not have the confidence, maybe the criteria or the framework, or you are not going to put yourself on the line for other people. That's cool. Not a lot of people will do that. I will put my job on the line. I will put myself, I will put my brand on the line to lose my job, to represent for other people, to give them a boost. Even if it's one position, even if it's awareness, that is me making a stand. Because if I don't do it, essentially you have to figure it out the hard way, you know? Examples that I've seen, you cut DEI programs, you displace a lot of these organizations that help awaken the organization or even other people. You start to displace folks that are kind of coming together, starting to create a collective, you know, starting to feel like, hey, you know, like there are not a lot of us in this organization. There's only 5 of us, maybe 10 in this whole organization. But like, let's come together and like, let's talk about some issues. You know, we don't necessarily have to surface them, you know, and bring them up to HR. Don't have me get started on HR because they don't have the education, they don't have the ambiguity to deal with these issues. So a lot of it, you had people or other practitioners that I would work with, instead of going to HR to make a report, they would come to me. They'd be like, hey, Ube, I'm having a problem with this partner. You know, I'm getting stonewalled. I'm getting pushed to my extent. I'm getting squeezed like an orange. I am tired. I don't know what to do, but I'm still do what I do as a practitioner. And when you speak to somebody and they just like, all they want to do is quit, all they want to do is leave, you know, like it takes a lot to pull somebody back and be like, hey, I will do whatever I can to get you into a better position. I will try to get you on my team. You know, like, I mean, there is so many internal politics. It's not easy as snapping your fingers and calling it a day. So like I try to give people the real platform, you know, as real as possible. This is what I'm gonna do. Here are the people that I'm gonna talk to. This is what I'm going to bring up. Are there any additional things that you want to bring up in order for me to make you a better person, you perform much better, you to be more confident in your sense of self? Because I know you don't want to quit, you know, because you're speaking with me. You know, if I could quit, I would quit once somebody want a partner or leadership called me out of my name. That's a quit. Boom, done. Guess what? It's not enough, because the person that is doing that, whether it's in an organization, whether it's outside, whether it's in general society, the fact of the matter is this is a thick skin that you have to carry 24/7. And I've had this conversation with Warren in the past where this is something that you don't turn on and off. You don't go to work 9 to 5 and be like, all right, cool, I'm gonna be super, you know, ethnic Ube today and represent for all of us. Yay. You know, like, no, like, even if I quit work and I'm like walking and, you know, I don't know, just maybe being in the wrong neighborhood or something or other, or going to a nice restaurant where they don't expect to see people like myself. That's another level of negativity that I have to deal with. That gets carried into work, that gets carried into my other channels that I exist. So the I'm gonna go back to answer your question, Warren, of bringing your authentic self. What does that mean outside of work? You know, what does that encompass as your whole sense of person? Because if you're trying to be somebody else at an organization, let alone in your social channels and around your friends and around family, you're not being authentic at all. You're being fake as fuck. You're just you're missing the mark. But if you could be that same person across the board and represent. I mean, you can't share certain things. You have to hold your tongue. I can't come out speaking in different languages. I can't come out with an accent in the professional world. You know, I know the different levels of dialect. I know how to navigate. You have to know how to navigate as a leader, whether people like to admit it or not. You do.
And
Because there's a lot of.
would you
Go
say it's
ahead.
kind of, I think what you're saying here is there's a balance to be struck, right? It's important to still bring your authentic self where you can, but there is still a balance there that needs to kind of, be there, right? Am I right in saying that?
I mean, like, yes, and like, I would say that's going more towards this kind of like epiphany of like, yay, I did it. But the and is the balance is always imbalanced, always, permanently. Um, and I think that's the friction of. I feel like we're digressing, but like that's the digression of being a person of color and navigating. You know, like, I know we're trying to keep it like more on like the professional spectrum and navigating the space, but navigating the space is it's not a switch. It's permanent. So like, what does balancing mean? Balancing would mean the essential state of you compartmentalizing all your different friends and your networks and what have you, but a lot of people don't think like that. I think like that, and I try not to, because it has me also burn a lot of bridges. Because, you know, if you don't really align in this area, then I kick you off into kind of the negative zone, you know, the danger zone. Like, I don't know, I don't really want to be around that person. That person brings a lot of negativity, or, you know, they could get me into a lot of trouble. So the gosh, that's a hard one. I know it's just one word, but Warren, but like the balance comes from within, if that makes sense. I think if you're a balanced person and you present a consistency across the board, no matter who you interact with, CEOs, leadership, general society, you know, somebody you meet at the cafe, you know, at the pub, whatever. Like, if that's you and you're presenting your balance forward, I think that's good. That's producing your authentic self. But when you're trying to balance the imbalance of all your different verticals, I think that's just where your wheels will just keep spinning. You know, like, you'll never get to ground zero. You'll never get to that nirvana. You'll never have that neutral landscape. You know, yeah. I don't know if that answered your
Really,
question,
no,
but
this is really great, Ube. I think you've kind of touched on so many interesting points here, right? And, I know that bringing your authentic self is a topic that you're quite passionate about, and it has kind of paved the way for your career, and I feel like that kind of segues nicely into, how you kind of, we spoke a bit about the areas that you weren't completely happy with in the organization, which kind of led you onto doing your own business venture. Is that right? That's what
yeah,
Ube Ice Creams kind of came about. You want to tell us
yeah,
a bit about that?
yeah, of course. Yeah, so Ube's ice cream shop. The background around that title, Ube, is me. Ube is also a very popular ice cream in the Pacific Islands, let alone hopefully the rest of the world. It's a purple yam, hence why I always wear purple. My family's infatuated with it. You know, I could go down the list. Ice cream. I love ice cream. I also have it tattooed on me. Um, you know, ice cream and I go down for life. But it's just the sweet enrichment that it just brings forward. It's the happiness, it's the camaraderie, it's the face that you see on kids' faces, you know. or even the mess that it creates as well. And the shop was basically the firm, and that gave kind of this ubiquitous relationship of like a design firm, a storefront. It just gave it a nature of like modularity going forward. So that's a little bit behind like the overall holistic name. And yeah, a lot of what I dealt with in the professional world with the smaller agencies was an output of creating my own firm as well. Um, we were known for working with a lot of, pretty much almost every bike firm that you can think of. We would do like a lot of specialty teams. We would work with, and cycling, just in case whoever's tuning in, we're talking about bicycles, but like these bicycles, they go for way more than my first car. Like my last frame that I did for a pro rider went for 2,000 US or 20,000 USD. So I mean, like that's not like, yeah, and like that was for the wheel set, and
I
then
was
we
impressed with the 2000, 20,000.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah, we
okay,
didn't get into the R&D
okay.
of the frame. Yeah,
I
yeah.
see you.
Yeah. So we're getting into like the high, for a full build, kit and everything. I mean, they're talking like 80, 100 plus. A lot of money gets invested into it. So like that, yeah, like that's where I made kind of a mark. And this is something that I didn't bring up in the beginning because I digress so many different times. But like a lot of myself, like I started in the graffiti world as well. It was that like self-expression, a platform where I felt like I had ownership. Also just where, we talk about that authenticity, like that's where I could be my visual 100% authentic self. And being my authentic self didn't mean expressing who I was or interacting with hundreds of people or what have you, or talking with various companies. It meant I had a wall. It was night. It was quiet. I had a few other people to help me fill in. Like we're just dialed in, doing our thing, doing what we love. You weren't necessarily getting paid for putting up a nice large piece, you know? And I'm not talking about like scratching your name and doing some whatever, what have you. Like we're talking about like very nice structured pieces of art. They would range from anywhere from, I don't know, 3 meters to, I don't know, 18 meter. I mean, like it depends on what your landscape was and what you were trying to essentially communicate yourself through a visual platform. So that platform really represented who I was, and still comes to fruition of who I am today. Because there's like so many different demographics in that field, and I really appreciated like the stories and what people brought to the forefront. Like people weren't multimillionaires. They were like basically scratching the surface. They were making it day by day, but like we had the essence to share together, which was a spray can and what hue or hex that it sprayed out of it and what we did with that tool. And that appreciation, made me really kind of cascade into this like hyper empathetic or sympathetic journey going forward, and this is something that I carried throughout my career. And I guess this is in tangent with like, or in tandem with being authentic, like being authentic for myself is representing for other people, whether it comes full circle or not. For the most part, I don't expect it to come full circle to me, but like, what are people doing with that interaction, with the information, with whatever that touch point may be, like that that speaks a lot more to myself than anything else. So a lot of it is things that you can't capture through MPSs or, customer research or what have you. A lot of it is kind of gut feeling. So yeah, that graffiti field and culture and energy fueled the Ube's ice cream shop going forward. And a lot of it to start out with was me applying that visual interest and people kind of knowing my background, and they're like, we want what you do on the street on my bike. And I'm not gonna pay you chump change. I'm gonna pay you a lot for it. Like, can you do this on this custom bike? And I'm all like, hey, I've never done it before, and this was like creating a framework that didn't exist. I was essentially creating a design firm off of how people are treated in the industry. I didn't really do it to come in to make money, to try to capitalize on the industry or to have clout for, hey, yeah, Ube was known for this and da da da. That wasn't my angle. It was just like, yeah, I got treated like shit. Like, if people work with me, hopefully I can treat them a lot better. Hopefully I can, shift the change management. Hopefully I can change the interactions of dealing with like neighborhood kids to medium businesses to even large corporations. Like, how do we create this structure that is quote unquote authentic? Meaning we created our own process and guidelines, but at the same time, we left a lot of room and opportunity for creating a bespoke notion and interaction of like creating the work based on what you wanted, and this derived from you as a person, so we would start out, hey, who are you? What are your favorite colors? What do you like to do? We would have like a nice little image board. We would come out with like, I was bringing methodologies from like all over the place. Like, hey, let's have an image board from like fashion. We have like a little graphic design. We'd do like some digital implementation. We would do like some design facilitation on a dry erase board. But again, like when I go back in retrospect, a lot of what we did not have a label. It did not have a name. Like design facilitation. And you just presented work. That's it. But like now you can have just a job doing that. And yeah, it's great that our area of expertise can like branch out into all these vertices, but like it was a time where I was pretty much creating a lot of this off the whim. But it wasn't off the whim, so to speak. It was like based off of each individual person. But when the word got around and people on international waters started following, and then we started getting like larger companies coming to us, then we'd be at like max bandwidth or capacity, and it just meant that I hate to say this, but we had to start creating an agency for our processes, and that was a huge shift away from this bespoke, this tailor-made offering, and I hear that term being used in corporate identity all the time, and that's not authentic at all. Like bespoke and tailored of like, oh, we're going to work on your customer segmentation and we're going to make sure they have the right entry points and exit points and da-da-da. That's not tailor-made. No, this is like derived from something that in existence was something that was true to the person, to the people, at least for myself. I redact that. Like, I'm not going to paint that broad brushstroke, but like it was something that really harnessed my clients. Like, my clients were not just, it wasn't a body of work where I like, oh yeah, I got a chat, cool, da-da-da, did the work, shift, lift and shift. I wanted to stray away from lifting and shifting. I wanted everything to be personalized, but at the same time, um, when your business starts to create a little traction, you have to start dealing with hiring more people, or either throttling the work, or creating agency and various processes going forward. So this is kind of something that I had to deal with when I started having higher clients, whether they were like celebrity level, or it was like a high-end bike manufacturer. I don't know if you know this, but we did a bike for Prince, the late Prince. The whole thing was fully custom. I mean, if you saw the bike, you'd be like, yeah, that's a
I want to
Prince
see the
bike.
bike. I need to see the bike.
But like,
Imagine it being cool.
yeah, it was a purple hue. It was like, how do I describe it? Like carbon fiber, but like there's different levels of like kind of gold metallic. But it was all transparent. And then like a purple haze over everything, with like kind of gold graffiti accoutrements all over. But the long and short of it, like depending on the lighting, it gave you like a different type of depth or feel going forward. So it wasn't like a one-stop shop where you like saw the bike from one view and you're like, cool, awesome, purple. Mm-mm. You had to look at it from several different views to really appreciate the essence of what we created.
I'm not going to ask how much that costs, but I do want to see it. It sounds incredible. And also,
Yeah, I'll share something.
your story has actually. I don't even ride bikes, but I want to have a bike. I just want a custom bike that I can
You
just
sure?
hang up in my house, and like as a piece of art. Yeah, definitely keen to look into that. You mentioned something about, and it's something that I found really interesting, partly because it's a theme that has been across the last three companies that I've been a part of, and
Okay.
something that's kind of highly relevant where I am now and the work I'm doing is around like personalization. And like you mentioned around, people talking about segmentation and entry points and, like tailor made, all this kind of stuff.
Right.
But you had a different approach. And I guess in your world, it really was personalized. But like, how can we bridge the two? How can we take what you learn through Ube's ice cream shop into the digital world, like into like digital products, and create more personalized experiences for people?
Yeah. I mean, that's a great question, and I do that wherever I can. Not necessarily just Ube's ice cream shop, but like, um, it's hard to fight, internal politics, meeting goals, um, also having like a duration of like the phases and stages of development. Like, are you trying to develop this and ship this product in 8 weeks? Do you have 14? Do you have 6 months? Do you have a whole year? Like there's so many different factors into developing that like quintessential product. And it also depends on like kind of your team as well. Like it just can't resonate from one person. I could bring a lot of flavor, I could bring a ton of color, but I don't have enough energy. I don't have enough momentum or energy to shift the landscape. I need help from people I work with, or even people that are on the other end, whether they're my clients or business owners or what have you. Um, so to answer your question, it takes more than yourself to bring that to the forefront. Um, and I talk about this like quite a bit internally of like, I need a dialogue in order for me to feel stimulated, and hopefully in return you feel stimulated. And like I try to like have these various conversations in order to have this necessary understanding of what people are trying to get out of the goal of work within an organization, if that's what we're talking about. And I think if you have that like level of pinpointing on like what everybody's requirements are, I mean, this is very difficult. You have to be legit hyper empathetic. You can't just say it and be like, oh yeah, I had a team meeting. That's not enough. Mm-mm. No, 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 no. Do you have the time to carve out 5 to 10 minutes and times that by whatever how large your team is to have those check-ins, those genuine check-ins? And then in return, create a strategy where you don't have that direct connection, but everybody else has that centrifugal information as well. You know, there's been organizations that I've worked for, there's been teams where people didn't even know what they did. They didn't even know what their favorite color was. They didn't know even nothing about them. You know, and I'm all like, you know what? Like, we need a pause. I know we got a deadline, but we're gonna have a bunch of campfire talks. It's gonna be 10 minutes each. You don't have to enjoy it, but I want you to know who you're working with. I want you to have a general understanding because I have a general understanding of who everybody I'm working with. I know what you do. I know what the requirements are. I know what the deliverables are. And that's how I, in return, create these very transparent phases and stages of work that not only meet the requirements of the client, they exceed it, and you don't have to stay up 24/7 to deliver it. I am not trying to squeeze the energy out of you. I'm trying to make an efficient process that you appreciate working around other people that you're with. You enjoy your work. You enjoy the organization. You don't have to drink the Kool-Aid per se. Like, don't do that. But like, just really enjoy yourself as a person, as a professional, and really embody that going forward. Not just that organization that you work at, current day, present, past. You embody that going forward. That's what I try to teach.
Yeah, no, this is interesting stuff, right? And I think being empathetic. No, it's
sorry, getting pumped up, man.
No, I love the passion. I mean,
that's that authenticity, man. Seriously. I mean, there's not a whole. I mean, I'll let you ask a question, but like, I interact with so much senior leadership and SVPs, and it's just like single serving. You know, it's just, I don't know. It makes me cringe, because they give a bad name to myself. You know, and I'm doing so much work. I'm doing time and energy, not just in organizations, but out. I'm doing pro bono work. I'm doing whatever I can. I'm doing visibility. Boom. You know, I'm also doing representation. Representation is the most important thing. You know, like having that sense of self and identity is what I want people to embrace. That's it. But like, that's also threatening because organizations can't capitalize on that because I'm trying to create transferable people. If I'm gone and I'm somewhere else and you want to link up with me and you have this like general, philosophy, you're a diamond in the rough, or a diamond, you know. I'll pause there. Go ahead, Warren.
Yeah, no, I think I wanted to come back to this part around empathy, right? So you touched on that a little bit, and you know, I know
hyper.
that
No. Hyper empathetic.
Empathy. That's it.
Hyper
empathy. So,
like,
you know, we talked a bit about how customer experience has kind of, you've taken the learnings from that business venture, and that's how you kind of took that hyper empathy and brought that to customer experience in the digital world, right?
Yeah.
How do you feel customer experience has changed over the years in the digital world? Do you feel like the role has changed, or the way that we approach customer experience has changed over the years?
Yeah. I mean, like, the identity of the business, it's currently changing. It's always changing. And this could be on many factors. It could be, you know, reorganizational structure of titles. This could be consolidation of being a practitioner, which we've kind of seen that for a long time, of like, hey, I'm a graphic designer, but I'm also a researcher. I'm a VD or visual designer. And also I do like this thing, UX, UI. Oh yeah, and I do a little coding on the back too. And I'm on pitches as well. Like that's like too many titles within one. But like, unfortunately, you have to kind of harness this, like, I hate saying this because like this term is this it just it cuts my soul, but being a unicorn, we've all heard it across the board, so many different industries. It's still being used. Usually people don't even know what it means. But like, being a unicorn and not appreciated, I don't I don't know if I could represent for that going forward. But so I don't digress. Being a CX practitioner, you have to be open to changes in structure, tooling, and also demographic of the practitioners you're going to be around. Like what I alluded to before, when I started out, there was no such thing as like all the X's, the CX, the UX, the UI, customer success, performance marketing, research, UX research. I mean, like, I could keep going down, and yes, it's great, and I want to embrace that our identity has become, another level, or this growth that has separated or segmented itself into other areas. But coming back and talking about what I have to deal with, it's trying to educate everybody that I come in contact with. I feel like I'm grasping for straws, even in like loose conversation. What do you do? I cannot just say my title and be okay with it. I have to say, oh yeah, what do I do? And it's like, this 80-page kind of descriptor of like, oh, this is what I do. I cannot say my title in one line. And hopefully we do get to a point where I can say like, hey, I'm in customer experience, or I'm a creator, or I don't know. You could say whatever, but it has that substance. I feel like if you say a creator now, as opposed to when I said that I was a creator when I was starting out, it had a lot more substance. It had more ambiguity. But now you say creator now, like everybody just assumes that you're doing kind of YouTube content. Maybe you're a videographer, or it's not even videography anymore. It's just like, yeah, I don't know. It's hard because like it shape shifts, like even the tooling. Like you needed to contact a specific professional, like all of us on this call, and that was the only way you're able to get the work done. Now it's like, hey, take a certificate, or like, hey, you could do it yourself, or be a designer in like 30 seconds. And it's just like that dilution, but like propaganda of like what we've done. It's like again, it goes back to this double-edged sword. Like, yeah, I'm happy that there's more awareness, but like, it's just that unawareness keeps going forward. Even then, the organizations, like, they want to hire customer success personnel, practitioner. You read the description, they want a graphic designer, they want a researcher. Okay, cool, whatever. Hey, can I have a customer experience person? Okay, you can. What? And like, this is one of my questions. What does customer experience mean to you? What is that based off of? They're like, like somebody that like kind of lifts and shifts, does like pixel pushing, does a little bit of testing, but like still leads the team and, still like grows. And I'm like, wait, like everything that you're saying is not necessarily the profession that you're trying to hire for, so like, you need to have that clarity. And yeah, unfortunately, like I see a lot that that people are doing, well, whether they're willing to admit or not, they're not necessarily doing their craft. I don't do my craft. Like I have a cool title, but what I'm actually doing, I'm a VP. I'm doing OKRs. I'm trying to meet goals. I'm trying to maximize teams. I'm trying to create agency within organizations. I'm trying to make sure that people could use documentation and essentially be an extended version of Ube by using this document, by plugging and playing and putting that in front of a client. So it like me reaching those goals, yeah, it's great. It's amazing. But also I'm kind of playing into that advocacy of like diluting what we do as a profession, so it's really hard, when I think about it. And even when I do it, like there's a lot of times where I take a deep breath and I'm like, hey, like I'm really not here for this, but like God, I got to do it, or being put in a position of like, hey, you're an amazing at your craft. You're here for this. But you have to basically upsource, aka fire, these two departments. You got to do it. That wasn't on my JD. That wasn't on my job description. Nobody ever told me that I had to do it. My boss doesn't want to do it. HR doesn't want to do it. Oh, so it falls onto you, to me, because I'm the next in line in leadership. So what are you going to do? Are you going to do it and make sure people have that skill set and tool set to go on and grow that you essentially built up? Or are you going to pass it down for somebody else to do? So you're put in these like really difficult positions. And what I'm talking about has nothing to do with design, nothing to do with customer experience. But that's what you're climbing up to do. So this is my problem with being leadership or executive leadership in my position, but yeah, I mean, hey, you gotta shape shift and do it. I mean, how many people would say that they had to fire a whole department, and post it on whatever their verticals are? Nobody's doing that. Oh, hey, I had to fire 5 people, a small team, a small concept service team. I'm gonna just post that. I felt bad, but now I feel better sharing it with all of you. That's not gonna happen, because the clout points would go down.
Yeah.
But like, this is a real thing. I don't know if either one of you had to like be put in that position, but like,
Yeah,
it's a real thing.
I can fully relate to that. It's funny that you mentioned that you wouldn't post about it. It's so true. It's so true. It's funny because it's not just me, but pretty much, I would say, majority of the people that I know in my circles that got promoted into a leadership position, almost instantly, they had to let go of people.
Yeah.
It's almost, sounds really bad, but it's kind of true. It almost sounds like in some organizations, it's like a rite of passage. To kind of prove that you've worked out what it takes to make tough decisions or something like this,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, but I've noticed that people that are newly put into very senior positions, it's something that they seem to have to do almost immediately. Yeah, it's the sad truth. Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
you're not going to post that. You're going to post it. You're just going to, kind of hold it inside you. Just keep the guilt trapped and not speak about it.
Right, exactly. And that's gonna internally eat away at you. And what I just described right now, this is my reaction of why I want to really build up individuality going forward. Like, hey, I want people to devote that energy to kind of the cause, my team, the organization, wherever I'm at. But like at the same time, if I have to let you go, I want to make sure I can still look out for the best interests of yourself, you know? And here's where the hyper empathetic notion comes in, because like I don't just cut people and call it a day. Like I make sure I follow up with them. I give them my personal contacts, and I'm like, hey, I have like 5 of my friends hiring. If I vouch for you, you're good. Like, and again, this is all me out of my hours of the organization. Because I just feel like it's a duty for me to do, because I've been put in those positions so many times where, guess what? I would get absolutely no explanation. I would get no reasoning of like, hey, you know, we have to cut you because of budget cuts. Boom! That little bit would have been night and day. But then like you just say, hey, we gotta let you go. That's it. Cool. Turn in your equipment. All your stuff, all your access is turned off. See you later. So like that like open book for you to internalize basically everything under the sun, and like just really capture on that like kind of mental illness, is something that is reoccurring and that always happens. And I just don't want, because that's happened to me. That's happened to others. How can I mitigate that just as one person? Because it's a real thing. People could spiral into however they take it. We haven't gone into this, but like the reason why I had to basically close the doors to Ube's ice cream shop is that I was working on max capacity. I have bad work ethic, which means I don't know when to turn it off. I basically worked myself into the hospital close to death twice. And I needed that, pretty much that calling, that one specific, or that two specific interruptions where it's like, hey, I'm gonna cut you off. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to function. You can't go to work the next day. You've been working yourself through the roof. I don't know what's wrong with you. We gotta recharge. We're gonna cut out. And when your body does that, and if you've been in that position, it is very terrifying. Because you're working one day and then you wake up in a hospital and you're like, whoa, what happened? What's the disconnect? How did I get here? I remember I was working on this project. Did I pass out in front of the client? Hopefully I didn't. Like, what happened? They're like, Ube, you just collapsed. You went to the hospital. We had to call the ambulance. Your heart stopped beating. Yeah. So like a lot of what I've gone through and my learnings, and whether I had to learn on the happy path, usually it was on kind of the lower sides of the journey. It wasn't the moments of joy. It was a lot of the friction points. A lot of me becoming a great leader today is learning the repercussions of my horrible work ethic, treating people like shit, being a narcissistic asshole, burning bridges. But like that like kind of spiraled into being a better person, and also just being like hyper naive in my overall culture and family. Like a lot of that stemmed into it. So that's why I always say, like, I was learning in action, like it was very dynamic. I was just like, hey, like this is how we would deal with this, like, let's kind of go with it. Like I'm trying to do something new, trying to, be a little bit forward thinking, but like when you're forward thinking and you come from kind of isolated, or I don't want to say isolated, but like kind of the Pacific Island region. Like there's not a whole lot of us sprinkled around the world. So it's like, and I'm like kind of ambiguous because I'm mixed up with like more things. So I like kind of have a little bit more gray area that I can blend into a little bit. Maybe not. I don't know. You guys could tell me, but like I like to think that. But like you're carrying like a lot of this baggage, and then you're like carrying additional baggage where you thought this was the right thing. I have to be the narcissistic asshole. I have to be the leader in order to create good for everybody else. You create these like personified values of these like characters, these actors in your head in order for you to go forward, and that's why I put so much passion into like if you do have to create an archetype or a persona, I want to make sure like that's accurately portrayed. I'm not going to create like some personified actor because that's not the accurate representation of the people that are using your digital product or your phygital, whether you have a storefront and then they go digital, like D2C, digital to digital, digital to consumer, consumer to digital, whatever. You pick your your overall way of like creating structure of like how you deliver the information or where your customers go. But a lot of what I had to learn personally is just, it was a lot of low moments to create the high moments of joy, and that's, I continue to share that, like I was not a perfect person. I was not on this hyper empathetic pathway to like wake up other people. Like I had to go through a lot of negativity and a lot of lows in order for me to create the highs and kind of go against the grain of what everybody else was doing in order for me to do something that was actually different, that was actually authentic. And creating that authenticity is very hard because you have to look at not only the people around you or whoever is around you, you have to look at yourself internally. And I guess that's the hardest part. How do I look at myself in the past that reinstates how I am in the future? How do I look at the people that are around me and who I surround myself with? And what is my dynamic with that? Do I feed into that? Or am I my consistent self? Am I my sense of self? That's what you should always consistently ask yourself. That should be your retrospect going forward. And this has everything to do with professional and personal.
Ube,
I will pause there.
Yeah.
It's probably too much to have at a coffee shop.
That's a very, very powerful message to end on. Honestly, like I think we could continue. In fact, you know what? I think we should have you back on the show just so we can just unpick a little of the topics.
yeah.
In further detail. I think it's been incredible. I think that you've kind of really kind of opened up our minds, but also I'm sure the listeners' minds in terms of what it actually truly means to be a leader, like what sacrifices are being made. It's a journey.
Just the person. That's it.
Honestly,
Yeah.
you need pain to experience joy. And, I think that's something that I think Warren and I probably both learning in our leadership journeys as well. It's not as easy as it might appear to be. There are things behind the scenes, tough decisions that you have to make, sacrifices that have to be done. And I think one thing that really resonated with you, to me, that you said in this instance was just around the impacts of some of our decisions as leaders on the team that we have as well. You know, if you're kind of letting someone go, or you're making a form of tough decision that impacts an individual, you don't know where that's leads, and you'd be leaving them. And so I think, you know, it's definitely important to kind of continue your check-ins kind of with those individuals. Warren, I'm not sure what your perspective is, but very powerful messages.
Yeah, no, I think it's been great. You know, I think this is probably the quietest Jay and I have been on the call, because I think
For real?
a lot of it is because no, a lot of it I have to say, because a lot of it is because, you know, you're saying a lot of things, Ube, and I'm kind of just thinking about it in my head, right? Because yeah, there's some really insightful points here that I'll definitely be taking going forward, and I think people listening will, you know, really take forward, especially around this authenticity, right? Bring your authentic self, you know, to everything that you do, and the learnings that you took from doing it on your own business, and how that's translated into, you know, the way that you deliver customer experience now. I think, yeah, it's amazing. So really glad to have you on the show. As Jay said, we'll probably bring you back if you're willing to, for another show. But yeah, Ube, tell us where we can find you.
Yeah, sure. You could DM me on the LinkedIn. My personal business email is shared, first and last name at Gmail. That's usually cool if you want to get in touch with me. I'm not going to give out my personal number, but yeah. I mean, like, I make it easy for me to be reached. You know, that outreach is, you know, I'm not somebody on a pedestal. You know, again, like, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but like, I look at myself, and, you know, I had one of my mentors actually ask me, like, hey, you know, what would the Ube today say to the old Ube, you know? And I was like, you know what, like, I've gotten that question, and, like, to be honest, the old and Ube, the old Ube, or the little ice cream person, I would not listen to myself. You know, I speak different, I dress different, I have like a different strategy. I know how the world works. I would not trust that person at all. Absolutely not. Mm-mm. No. Um, and this is also what I think when I do like any type of like speaking engagements, like pro bono, like at a high school or what have you. Like, these kids, they want to kind of see the fruition. They want to have that kind of hero journey. They want to look towards you for kind of greater landscapes, or even opportunities. But at the same time, it's very difficult, because they're seeing you again in your last chapter. Your last chapter is very different from that first, you know? Let's just say nobody would be calling me on, like, to do a podcast, let alone a keynote, let alone even hiring the old Ube at all. Absolutely not. Mm-mm. And I know that, and that's okay. But like, that's it. You know.
Well, look, Ube, like
My number is 555-255-5889. You could call me.
We'll call you. We'll be calling you.
So many people are going to apply that number.
They're gonna try, like, wait, is that too many numbers? What country is that? No, but real talk, I mean, I'm easily to get in contact with if you want a one-on-one. You know, I'm pretty much what you see is what you get. Like, you can ask Warren. I'm not really that different on a one-on, which I appreciate myself. Like, I'm glad that I can. And it takes work, everybody. It takes time. Like, you can't just say like, oh yeah, I'm true to myself and I, you know, am 100% authentic. Like, no, absolutely not. You know, I have to check in with myself like on a weekly basis. You know, there's times where I'm just like very low, and Warren's like, hey man, you know, it's not that bad. Like, you got this. Like, keep your head up, you know, and you need people whether it's a network or even yourself, but like just kind of keep that head up, keep keep those shoulders high, keep representing, because it's hard out there. Yeah, there isn't no kind of, X equals Y equals amazing success in the industry. Like, I refuse to lie to people about that. I can get you there, but it takes a substantial amount of work and, continue to work, So, yeah, I mean, on this call, I mean, I didn't want to sell wolf tickets or lies to people. That's essentially what I wanted to get down to. I don't even know if we talked about like customer experience, but hopefully the authenticity of this conversation.
Yes. I think we touched on so many honestly, I think we touched on so many important topics. I think authenticity is extremely kind of important. I think that's like the running theme of this show. People get the value. I think we got a lot of value. If you want to dive deeper into anything, maybe it will be customer experience. Who knows? We'll have you back on now.
Yeah. We'll have another call, going into the methodologies and what have you.
Brilliant. Well, look, thanks, Ube. Thanks for joining us on the show.
All right. Yes. Mahalo. Thank you very much, everybody. Salamat po. That just means thank you. Thank you a lot.
You're welcome. Pleasure was ours.